Yeah, I was working in private equity at the time, 9 to 5, get in the office at 7 a.m., leave at 7 p.m. I like the people I work with, but it was just not the type of life I wanted. The point is to have a fantastic lifestyle and a business which supports that lifestyle.
There's something called the law of diminishing intent, Lodi, and your best intention will decrease over time.
I'm pretty picky with who comes in. My philosophy is always, if I can't get a beer with you, I'm not going to let you in the franchise system. Now, there's no such thing as passive income. Everyone knows that. Or hopefully you haven't been sold this and you bought into something where it says passive income. It's fake. There's no such thing as passive income in franchising. It took me a long time to say, all right, I'm going to give social media a try because it just felt so cringy for me. And finally, when I did it, and once you crack how to do it on one platform, now you feel more comfortable finding the algorithm on another platform and another platform because you're like, okay, this works. A good franchisor is probably doing so much stuff on the back end for the franchisees that the franchisees don't even know that they're doing that. They never have to learn. It just gets done for them. I never realized that until I built the franchisor. I'm like, oh wow, there's a lot we got to do for the franchisees to make sure they don't have to worry about it. The goal for most franchisees to get in is
Neil built a $1 million business from scratch, from the ground up. He was unhappy at work and he went out there and made it happen. Then he made the bold decision, or crazy, to franchise his business. He now has over 20 franchisees and is building his franchise and supporting his franchisees in a unique way. Now, this was a really fun conversation because Neil and I have so much in common. We both use social media and content as a way to grow our businesses. We're both really tech forward in how we operate and use a more new age approach to our businesses with using overseas labor. So yes, we talked about how his business works and how much it costs to start up and what's in his item 19, meaning how much does it make, and all of the facts of how he got it up and running, all of that good stuff. But at some point in the conversation, it was just like friends talking about business and life and how to go out there and be successful and have fun doing it. So if you're looking for a fun and relaxing listen, then this is definitely the episode for you. Now, if you want to buy a franchise in the next 12 months, you should check out my free franchise masterclass and the other resources that we have if you want to buy or grow your franchise at franchiseempire.com. And if you want to work with me and my team on finding or buying a franchise or resale business, then you can go to franchiseempire.com/check territory and you can schedule a free call to see what's available in your area. The link is also in the description below. So, with that said, sit back, relax, and enjoy the episode. Welcome to the Franchise Empire Show. They say Rome wasn't built in a day, and building your empire doesn't happen overnight. My name is Parekh Johnson, and owning franchises is what helped me go from employee to employer and start building my empire for my family. So this podcast is for you, the empire builders. For those of you who want to build something that stands the test of time. This is for those of you who are crazy enough to believe that you can make the dream in your head come to life. This podcast is all about bringing you real people who are building real empires so you can get inside their mind and heart and get proven strategies and actionable insights that will catapult you to build, grow, and scale your empire. All right, everyone, welcome to another episode of the Franchise Empire Show. I'm here with Neil. He has a cool franchise. He's the franchisor. So, hey, man, I'm excited to talk.
super excited, Tarek. Excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yes, sir. So you had a cool video on is it Upflip?
Yeah. I was on the Outflip YouTube channel recently.
Yeah, so that got a good amount of views. What was that experience like and how did that come about? That had to be cool, great exposure.
Yeah, it was great exposure. It was interesting because I've never really done something like filmy, and it's funny because I live in Los Angeles right now, and I see it all the time with people on the streets doing film stuff, and I've actually never done it. So that was my first experience with like a team who flew out to Los Angeles, followed me around for the day, and like recorded everything. So it was actually really unique. It was a long day of recording, but I think the product turned out really nicely. The video for anyone listening is just about my origin story of how I started, made this on the side when I was working my 9 to 5, quit, traveled, and started franchising it later on. But Tarek, just always be as transparent as possible too. With that video, I think we got like 300 franchise leads at the moment. So it was super interesting of how many people resonated with it as well.
Wow, that's crazy. That's a ton. And how many around how many views does the video have right now?
Yeah, it's about 200,000 views right now.
Wow, that's big. Yeah, Outflip has a huge channel.
Yeah, they've got a good following and high production, and they're cranking out the videos, man. They know what they're doing.
That's awesome. Sweet, man. So, okay, so yeah, tell us about what's your business? What do you guys do? And how does it work?
Yeah, so I run a company called Maid This Franchise. Maid This does residential and Airbnb turnover cleaning. So we're actually the first and only Airbnb cleaning franchise in the US that exists. The software could like hook into Airbnb, VRBO, any of those softwares or any of those platforms and automate scheduling. So Tarek, if you had a vacation rental, anytime you have a guest check out, it'll automatically schedule cleaning with us, automatically assign the primary and backup cleaner, send a checklist to the homeowner, things like that, and we do residential cleaning as well. So I started at Tarek in 2013, which is crazy. It was over 10 years ago for my first location in LA. Yeah, I was working in private equity at the time, 9 to 5, get in the office at 7 a.m., leave at 7 p.m. I like the people I work with, but it was just not the type of life I wanted. I'd look at the guy at the corner office and think, that's not who I want to be. I got to get out. So I started looking for an escape route, and I'll dive into exactly how I found it, but eventually found Made This and started that as my side hustle.
Wow, that's awesome. So when you say that you guys have a software that connects into so it's always interesting talking to like on this podcast we'll talk to franchisors and we'll talk to franchisees. And it's such a different conversation because like I literally right before this I just recorded with a franchisee because I batch record our podcast on Wednesdays for all the listeners out there, by the way. That's how we do it. I stack them on Wednesdays. And we're talking about content creation, by the way. It's like there was a point where we were always scrambling trying to get a podcast out in time. I think we have like 6 recorded that haven't been edited yet. It's the first time ever that we are ahead of schedule, which is a very exciting thing. By the way.
By the way, Tara, I feel you, man. I recorded 3 episodes yesterday for my podcast, and before that, I was scrambling. I'm like, "We're going to record one, and we're going to air it tomorrow." It's just like it's always a flywheel.
Yes. Oh man, there was a point where for the listeners, there was a point where I think we had 2 or 3 solo episodes back to back, and that was just purely because we did a terrible job planning of getting guests.
Those are so hard, by the way. You're like, I'm still talking. We're still going.
Nice, nice. Okay. So to the point before, the guy that I just met with, he's a franchisee, and has 100 employees of a security business. And, so a lot of the conversation was around, it's so awesome because the franchisor has this, and this, they provide support with all these things. There's these proven systems, but you have a software. Did you have to create it? How did that work? Because you didn't have anyone giving you the template or the blueprint. You had to come up with it.
Yeah. So we didn't create the software. I do not want to be a software company. I've heard too many horror stories about custom built software. So it is off the shelf software that we've then customized on the back end. So no one else really uses this in the cleaning space because it's very specific for short-term rentals. And there's not too many companies out there who mostly do short-term rentals. So we're one of the few people who use the software for this use case. But a lot of what we do, we're a pretty tech-forward company. Now, that doesn't mean we want to develop our own software, but in this day and age, you don't really need to, in my opinion, unless you're doing something really high-end and complicated. A lot of the software now with tools like Zapier, automations, APIs, you can connect the software and have it talk to each other and make things automated. So we use like as much tech as we can. We're building some custom GPTs right now to help out franchisees. We have all the software which we've kind of customized, and through Zaps, we're making them all talk to each other to automate everything. So we use quite a few software platforms that all talk to each other. So on the franchise end, they really have to deal with one or two. Maybe they take the booking and they put the quote in the main platform. What franchisees don't even know is that once they put a quote in, through our automations, it's going to zap it to the CRM, zap it through an online marketing funnel, zap it to a variety of different text blasts. There's so many things that happen on the back end, which they don't even have to deal with. None of that's custom built software by us, but the funnels are all custom built, and that's just included as part of it.
My intention with this podcast is to help you build your empire. If you've gotten a single piece of value, one of the best ways you can help me and the podcast is to simply press the like button on YouTube. Lastly, share this podcast. Share it with someone who you know who is an empire builder. Imagine the impact you can have by helping them learn something that can build their business and empire. People will associate the value they got from this information from you, the person that shared it with them, all because you shared it with them. I appreciate you and your support. Let's get back to the episode. Yeah, and that takes a tremendous amount of time, effort, energy, trial and error to create. It's funny because I'm sure there's folks listening right now. They're like, Zapier, what does that mean? And but having been in this world myself and in this online world, I mean, we have a full-time person that just on our team that just handles all of that, all of the back end, all of the back end systems, and we have stuff going wrong every day on a daily basis. Or actually, I just saw my inbox kind of right in between the podcast. Got what was it? I saw emails in there from, we use Make now instead of Zapier, however you pronounce it, because Make has a little bit more. It's a little bit more robust, but it's basically the same thing. But yeah, that some scenarios failed. So I've just learned to ignore those emails, and that the team has gotten it. But what does your team look like on your end from from the franchisor side of things? Are you using contractors to do some of these things? Are you doing it all? What does it look like from kind of like a home office standpoint or HQ standpoint?
Yeah, it's a variety of stuff. And probably Tarek, like I never came from the franchise world. I know you were part of Robex as a franchisee, and now you've started your own thing. On my end, I was never a franchisee, and so I didn't realize how much stuff franchisors do for their franchisees. You kind of like oftentimes you're like, oh, the franchisor, they make so much money, they're just getting the royalties. And a good franchisor is probably doing so much stuff on the back end for the franchisees that the franchisees don't even know that they're doing that. They never have to learn. It just gets done for them. I never realized that until I built the franchisor. I'm like, oh wow, there's a lot we got to do for the franchisees to make sure they don't have to worry about it. A lot of that is hiring people internally or finding the right vendors. There's some things where it doesn't make sense for us to do internally. For example, we have an SEO vendor. We don't do that in-house because the vendor is someone who's very specialized in local SEO, knows what they're doing, has their own business. We don't need to learn that, relearn how to do that, and then do it for franchisees. That's something where we're going to get group rates for and then outsource. Some things where it just makes sense to do in-house. For example, we do social media posting for the franchisees. Someone on my team, that's part of that person's job description, along with a variety of other things in the funnel and marketing to do for the franchise. So if there's some things which it makes sense to internalize, it's simple enough. I could bundle into someone's job description, which makes sense. That makes it more cost efficient for everyone. But we aren't bringing everything in house because it would just be way too expensive, way too bloated for the franchisees, and largely unnecessary. So that's the way I kind of think about how to hire internally or externally.
Yeah. And I want to come back to that in a second, but kind of going back a little bit to some of the basics of your business. So what is what's your kind of item 7 or in terms of startup costs, what does that range look like? Do you guys have show an item 19? And if so, what does that look like? And what are just kind of some of the foundations of the business?
Yeah. So in terms of the cost, we're what's called a low cost franchise. It's a pretty lean model once you get started. So our all-in cost is our initial franchise fees $39,000. All-in costs are between 50 and 70 on the high end. And 70 is like if you're in an office space and you don't own a computer yet, things like that. So it's a pretty lean model. My philosophy with this is always I want things to be lean, to add flexibility. Like Tarek, you and I both know franchisees who have like 20 trucks, equipment, office space, leases. Their overhead base level is like 20 grand a month. Now, if recession happens, what's going to happen to that franchise, right? Like there's so much bloated overhead. Now, there's pros of that too, right? You could grow and scale really fast. And my philosophy, and a lot of people who buy into Made This, the point is to have a fantastic lifestyle and a business which supports that lifestyle. Part of that to me means location independence, means it runs really lean, means it's very sustainable in a recession. Because of that, our startup costs are low because the business model doesn't need a crazy amount of overhead. Cleaners go straight from their home to the job site. Um, Everything's digital. You don't need an office. You don't need vehicles. You don't need wraps. Everything's done online, meaning most of the costs after that initial franchise fee are going towards your own marketing. That's by far the biggest spend is just marketing. Everything else could be run from a computer, wherever in the world you are. And I know I told you before, but I ran this for 7 years fully remotely. I was supposed to travel for a year. I ended up traveling for 7 years, building Made This while traveling across 50 countries, kind of proving that the model could be done remotely, right? And that you could do it while traveling. You could do it from wherever in the world you want to, even though it is a local business. And to me, that's the cool part because you could use global talent to service this local location and just crush the competition completely. So that's the exciting part. And all of that to say is it's a pretty lean model on purpose for the purpose of why this franchise model exists in the first place. Um, I'll dive into the item 19 now as well. So we do have an item 19. We're a relatively new franchise. So the item 19, there's about 3 locations in there right now. Letting you know on my location, what's disclosed, we're at around like 1.2 million in revenue right now, for the single location. I'll have to double check what it says on the bottom line over there. But the goal for most franchisees to get in is they want to scale the business, put people in place, and automate it as much as possible. Now, there's no such thing as passive income. Everyone knows that, or hopefully you haven't been sold this and you bought into something where it says it's passive income. It's fake. There's no such thing as passive income in franchising. But you could get things to a point where you're mostly managing, right? So I've been in business for long enough, and for the last few years, probably spent a handful of hours per week, maybe 5 to 8 hours per week on my main corporate location. It takes a while to get to the level of automation. You have to have enough money to hire people. But the goal for most franchisees is to get to that point. So for my main location, we're around 1.2 million in revenue. I work probably 5 hours per week on that specific location. We have a couple other franchises as well who have their item 19s disclosed. I'll have to go ahead and double check their exact numbers, but it's open for anyone. So if you get through the funnel or you find our FDD, you'll find our financials in there as well.
Yeah, cool. And so you still operate. So give us a deeper understanding into how the structure of your business works, because you're talking about being tech forward. How does like the labor model work, and walk us through like a scenario of like how the franchisee is making money and how that kind of breaks out.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's kind of like, I guess with a lot of home services, it's a supply and demand model. The product is the cleaners in this case. So at the beginning, there's always this weird chicken and egg problem. You have cleaners, you have customers, you have customers, you don't have cleaners, you kind of got to solve it. That's the beginning phase, the grind phase, as I call it. So let's say, Tarek, you get started. Your first goal would be, okay, let me get cleaners. You do a lot of recruiting. We'd show you the funnel and you'd onboard a cleaner. And we're going to tell you how to find the red flags, what's good, how do you actually onboard them, all the kind of good stuff. So now you have a couple cleaners, let's say, just 1 or even 2.
And are you and at that point, is that W-2? Is it 1099? Is it how does that work?
Varies by state. I think your state labor laws are going to dictate it a lot. Tarek, here in Florida, most of our franchisees are in Florida are using the 1099 model. Other states where it's not possible, they will use the W-2 model. The numbers largely work the same. It's just kind of how you categorize stuff and how you treat the person as well. So let's say in your case, I'm going to use Florida. Pretend you're using the 1099 model. You'd onboard someone and they're a 1099, meaning they're going to provide their own supplies. They're going to use their own car to go to the location. And you onboard them, you have the rate negotiated with them, and everything is set. Now you're going to be doing a variety of marketing on the other end. And this could be Google Ads, could be Thumbtack, could be Yelp if that's big in your market, could be community marketing. It's probably going to be a variety of all of these types of things. Someone's going to call you, you're going to pick up, you're going to go through the script that we've identified. And let's say you're looking for residential cleaning. You'd say, okay, great. What are you looking for? Here's the price. And you use the tactics to close the sale on the phone. The cool part about this model is there's very little need ever for in-person estimates. It's a small enough ticket item. You're talking $250 per cleaning. Usually at that amount, people are very comfortable doing a phone sale. So the only times that I've ever done a phone or an in-person estimate is if you're doing like a large Airbnb property manager, or you're going to do something like that where you want to go in person and see the units. It's pretty rare though. So you take the booking over the phone, goes in the software platform. You'll simply match the cleaner you just onboarded to the customer and make sure they're tied together. And that's it. The cleaner goes, you call the customer afterwards to make sure they're happy, and you continue on. And the beauty, in my opinion, is that this is largely a recurring revenue business model. When people get their homes cleaned, it's not like, great, it's cleaned, I never need to get it cleaned again. It's one and done. It's going to get dirty again, right? And most times people are looking for a recurring service, once a month, twice a month, every week sometimes. And on the Airbnb side, highly, highly recurring, high volume, right? Because units get turned over quite a bit between guests. So when you sign up a customer, it's not a one-time deal. Usually they're going to book a recurring service. And if not, they might book a reoccurring service, meaning they'll get a cleaning now, they might get a cleaning 2 months, 3 months down the line as well, as long as we do a good job on the first one and stay in communication with them as well.
Hey, I hope you're enjoying the podcast episode so far. One of the most consistent things that we hear from people that reach out to us is that buying a franchise feels really confusing. There's so many options out there. It's a scary decision. They don't know how to vet or do the due diligence or really narrow down on the right franchise for them, and then they really feel alone in the process. You might be the only one in your family who's ever pursued buying a franchise or being an entrepreneur, or maybe you've tried to start a side hustle before, or other businesses like me. Like before franchising, I was not able to crack the code on entrepreneurship. I'd like to invite you to reach out and work with us. We've helped many clients buy franchises, get them profitable, or buy resale businesses that are thriving. I'm talking about highly profitable resales, great value. We've allowed many of our clients to actually quit their job right away and replace their income immediately. So if you want to work with me and my team on finding or buying a franchise, doing due diligence, vetting it, or resale, then go ahead and go to tarjohnson.com/consulting, and we're happy to see if we can help. All right, enjoy the rest of the episode. Wow, that's awesome. So in like a model like yours, so your corporate location where you guys are doing, 1.2 in sales, what does that look like in terms of your team structure for that unit and kind of how you operate it? Like, do you have 10 cleaners, 15, 20? Are they part-time? Are they full-time?
The cool part is it's kind of variable. And there's always a flywheel, right? That's how it is in business. Like, you always got to be recruiting. Some cleaners are full-time, some cleaners are part-time. It varies drastically. For that location, I'd say probably 20 to 25 cleaners at any given time. And that could be a team of 2, that could be a team of 1. There's usually either 2 or 1. So it varies, but that's about roughly the amount on the cleaner side. The cool part is on the office staff side, everyone is out of country, right? It's a fully remote model. I think we're across 7 different countries. Our call centers go to the team in South Africa. And Tarek, if you ever talk to someone from South Africa, they have a really cool, like, British sounding accent. Americans love it. So they're fantastic at sales. It's funny enough, it's a team of Jehovah's Witnesses in the mountains in South Africa. Jehovah's Witnesses have gone 2 years of door-to-door selling. They know what they're doing. They're fine with rejection. They have great South African accents, and now they handle sales for us. So my point is, you could find cool little pockets around the world which service your needs for your local market. For example, our dispatch, they're all in Latin America because the cleaners are largely Hispanic, at least in Los Angeles, meaning they will be able to speak with them in Spanish well, right? So there's so many advantages of going global and then just dominating your local market if you know what you're looking for, and of course more cost efficient as well.
Wow, fascinating. I just wrote that down about the South Africa thing. I'm like, oh man, okay. Because yeah, it's cool, and this is why I knew I would enjoy this conversation with you, because I guess, I think we follow a lot of the same crowds and talking, funnels and kind of high ticket world and this and that. So, what's interesting is that we we have some W-2 employees that are full time. We have a good group of guys in Florida, kind of scattered throughout. It's just kind of happened coincidentally, but we have a full-time person in Egypt, and he runs our whole back end of everything and is incredible. And then we have someone on our team who lives in Colombia, right? And does our appointment setting. I don't know that. What's fascinating to me is how tactically and strategically how you've done that to align it with the needs of the business, which is pretty cool. So, do the franchisees get to use that same team as well? Is that how it works when they're coming on board? Like they're essentially plugging into that infrastructure that you've already built from that perspective?
My typical advice for franchisees when they're recruiting remote team talent is to try to get someone then on their own full time. It's cheap enough, and you could train them to do exactly what you want them to do as well. So we actually help franchisees recruit their first remote team talent. Now, some of them could be from South Africa. It's usually like a network effect of someone who works for us knows someone, and it kind of works out that way. Other people would be via our SOPs on job postings and how to actually find someone, how to vet someone. What we're building right now, which I haven't even told franchisees yet, is something I call Global Talent University. Like Tarek, imagine you're brand new, you don't know what you're doing as much. You come on board and you're like, all right, I'm going to invest in remote team talent. I'm going to hire someone. You hire someone. And you're like, I'm new myself. How am I going to train this person? There's so much to train them on. Like, where do I even start? When you bring someone on, we're going to have something called Global Talent University. You can simply drop that person into Global Talent University. How to use the software systems we use. What's the sales script like? All these different things involved with onboarding someone is kind of done for you instantly. So by the time they go through that and they come out, there's someone who mostly knows the SOPs of Made This, and you haven't had to do a single thing at all, right? There's things like that which it makes zero sense to do for one location. But if we have 20, 30, 40, 50 locations, all of a sudden it makes so much sense for the franchisor to invest in that because it helps everyone out. And if you do it once, you can do it for everyone. But one location, there's no need to do something like that.
Yeah, for sure. And I forgot to ask this earlier. How many franchisees do you guys have? And like, what's your ideal avatar for a franchisee that you guys are looking for?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's so interesting too because I think earlier stage franchisors like us, we're always figuring that out as we go. Of like, okay, who is the ideal avatar? We currently have 20 franchisees, 23 total locations, and I'll be honest, we're like I'm pretty picky with who comes in. My philosophy is always if I can't get a beer with you, I'm not going to let you in the franchise system. You want to like who you work with, right? That's kind of the point of business is support your lifestyle, make sure you enjoy the people you work with. So that's a big part of what we're doing over here. The ideal avatar is probably someone who might want to get into entrepreneurship, but isn't too sure about it. Maybe they're a little bit scared. Maybe they have fear, overwhelmed. They've been procrastinating. Those might be the emotions someone might be feeling. Many times they come from a 9 to 5 and they know that that's not what they want to do long term. They want to escape. They want a more safe route to do that as opposed to going through entrepreneurship alone. And entrepreneurship by itself is kind of risky, right? Like, in my opinion, working a 9 to 5 is even more risky. But if you get into business by yourself, you have to figure out how to do systems. If you're a brand new entrepreneur, you don't quite know what you're doing yet. So this is kind of like a escape route, a safety route for them to go along. So oftentimes it's someone who wants to leave the 9 to 5. Sometimes it's, at least from what I've seen, it's dual earners. So a husband and wife team. One of them wants to keep their 9 to 5. One of them wants to jump into entrepreneurship. It's someone who wants some level of remote freedom. Doesn't mean they're going to travel the same way I did, but they like that flexibility of working from home. Many times the person who works the 9 to 5 also has work from home capabilities, so they can kind of start this on the side, at least at the beginning, before transitioning to full time. So that's oftentimes who we're looking for. It's kind of that person who's newer into entrepreneurship or maybe doing their first or second thing and wants to use our systems to scale faster and leave the 9 to 5.
Nice. Now, a lot of times what happens with franchise or businesses that have a successful corporate unit and then they start franchising and getting a bunch of franchisees is eventually they wind up selling their corporate unit to a franchisee. To one, it helps infuse capital into the business. Number two, it gets them out of the business of running a franchise system so they can focus on like running, being a franchisor. What has been for you? I mean, you were 10, 11 years into running your corporate unit. What was that transition like between the challenges, focuses of going, okay, I'm operating a cleaning business to holy crap, now I'm a franchisor operating and supporting franchisees. Those are two completely different things.
What a great question. I had no idea it would be so different, right? The franchise business is not your normal, you're in the business of supporting other entrepreneurs and businesses. It's closer to a coaching program than it is an actual cleaning business. In fact, the end product almost matters so little for what I'm actually doing. It's just how do you support the franchisees? How do you help them be successful? That's all what it's about. And whether it's cleaning, whether it's painting, it doesn't really matter. The franchise business is very different. I had no clue what I was getting into at all. And in some ways, Tarek, I think that's the best in business where you're like, I didn't even know what I was getting into. I was just doing it, right? Because sometimes the more ignorant you are, the better. I don't know how to describe it, where you have no limiting beliefs in your mind. You're just like, oh, I'm just going to do it. And then later on, someone's like, hey, did you know that'd be really hard? I was like, no, I had no idea that'd be really hard. Like, I only found out when I started doing it, but I was too deep in it. That's kind of how my journey with franchising has been. Where at the beginning, it's like, you realize it's a different business model, that there's so much infrastructure needing to be built. And I'll be honest, at the beginning, I was like, how am I going to build this? This is crazy. I had no idea what I'm getting into. But over time, you kind of figure it out. And we purposely didn't try to onboard 100 units at once. Our growth is very sustainable. Most franchisees come either through word of mouth, either through social media, through Twitter, through Outflip, through YouTube. Part of that means the initial franchise fee that comes to us, that I could use to fund growth of the franchise arm. Now, a lot of franchisors will raise money. They'll go private equity. They'll go in a crazy amount of debt. They'll do a lot of things to actually build the infrastructure, because the franchising, it's an expensive infrastructure. Because we've been focused on social media and personal branding for me, I think we've been able to not have to go that route, right? And then we could grow sustainably. We could invest in the systems. And talk to your question about like a corporate unit and selling it, it's interesting because now I could see why people do that. On my end, most of my day goes towards the franchise side. You could say 90% of my week is on the franchise side and taking care of that. And I still have to manage the corporate unit if something goes wrong. It's not 100% smooth. Things are going to go wrong. That's bound to happen. It can be in some ways kind of a distraction, but in many ways I like it because I know what the franchisees are going through. I feel like some franchisors who just get into franchising, they might lose their way. And like, I kind of want to know what's going on the ground with the franchisees, right? For example, yesterday in our Slack community, we have a Slack community with all the franchisees, and it's always popping off. And someone posted how there's a strategy of going after student housing. And they're like, hey, here's the strategy of what you could do. And I wanted to prove to the franchisees that it's doable. So I said, okay, watch this. I called someone on behalf of my corporate unit, recorded the call, posted it to the group, let them know this is the kind of call and the voicemail you would leave. Then I'd email the person, copy down the email, put it in the Slack community. Then I did a follow-up with a pricing list, copy that, put in the Slack community, just to prove that it's doable, right? And that I was able to get someone who actually asked for the quote and went through that process. Now, if I didn't own a corporate unit, I guess I could do it for another location. But because I own a corporate unit, I'm testing stuff out myself. And that just allows, in my opinion, franchisees to move a lot faster because they see, hey, the owner, Neil, he's in the weeds with us. He's doing the same thing we're doing. He's proven that it can be done. And I think that speaks a lot. I think that that's actually really helpful for testing things out and making it grow. So at least for now, I intend to just hold on to my corporate unit. I think it's a fantastic testing ground. I think it's great cash flow. So I'm enjoying running it as well.
That's awesome. I love that story. And yeah, it's you're out there leading by example, really. And yeah, that's cool. I think there's probably franchisors who are in similar situations who don't do that stuff, right? So they're not benefiting from the fact that they're out there running it and sharing and kind of documenting the journey with folks. So that's cool that you're doing that. And I did it. I'm glad you brought up the whole, you making content and stuff like that, because uh, I I built this business currently for the last 3 years of, helping people buy and grow franchises and own money making franchises completely organically. It all happened through YouTube. We've just now started running ads, but it's just been through making videos and content, and we've built a really amazing business. So what's been that process for you, and in going out there and consciously saying, because you pretty much gotten all your franchisees organically as well. So what was your mindset? How have you gone out and kind of done that and approached that? Because I'm sure there'll probably be other franchisors watching that they'd love to do that instead of having to spend all the money on paid acquisition, or through only going through the broker channels where they get a very small percentage of the franchise fee themselves, or even franchisees watching that could go out there, be making content, and as a way to get customers and clients. So how have you approached that?
Yeah. And by the way, Tark, I do want to give you props. I've seen your YouTube channel even a couple years ago, and I was like, oh, this guy's legit, like good, solid production. You're one of the few guys on YouTube talking about this kind of stuff. So even before you and I connected, like I already knew who you were because of the content you're putting out. And it's funny enough, like that was maybe 1 year into your journey then, if you've been doing it for 3 years, because I saw that a couple years ago. So anyways, love the channel, man. I think it's great content. See, for your question about how my thought process around posting on social media, Target might have been the same for you. Just freaking awkward at the beginning, man. Like I'm not a social media guy. Like I don't like posting on Instagram. I don't like any of that kind of stuff. And when I started the franchise, I kept thinking, how am I going to get leads? And the traditional ways, you spend money on ads and then they come. And when I was started doing that, I realized like this is very expensive. This is really hard. People are coming in cold. And someone just said like, hey, why don't you just start posting on Twitter? I like Twitter. I think you'd like Twitter. Why don't you start posting on there? So I was like, okay, let me take a look. And this was the first time I was getting involved with any social media platform, right? So, you figure out, all right, here's the cadence I'm going to post. Here's the tone. Here's how to figure out the algorithm of the platform. And it took me a while to figure it out. Then I started liking it. So I think number one key is pick a platform that you actually like. I try to post videos and TikToks and stuff. It wasn't sustainable because I didn't like it, right? I didn't really like it that much, so it kind of just fizzled out. I ended up liking the platform on Twitter, so that's where I started to post more content. And finally figured out how to get somewhat of a following on there, how to post content which resonates. And a lot of the earlier franchisees, they all came through Twitter because they read my content, they resonated with it. All of a sudden you find people going through my podcast, which is called the Freedom Formula Podcast, listening to it, hopping on a call with me saying, hey, I've been following you for months. I listen to all your podcasts. I'm coming in super warm because I know what you're talking about. Let's move. That's a very different experience than someone who comes in through a paid ad, who has no idea who you are, who's on guard, thinking you're trying to sell them something. And I had no idea that was the power of social media. Now, I think everything in entrepreneurship is like, you just try it and see if it works. And sometimes it's really freaking awkward at the beginning. And this was the case for me too. It took me a long time to say, all right, I'm going to give social media a try, because it just felt so cringy for me. And finally, when I did it, and once you crack how to do it on one platform, now you feel more comfortable finding the algorithm on another platform and another platform, because you're like, okay, this works. I know it works. I know what the end result is going to be. This isn't just me trying something out and I'm not really sure if it's going to work. It will work if you put enough effort into it. And even for franchisees listening who have their own local business and they're like, should I get involved in social media? It's only upside. It's only organic traffic. And the cool part is people know you, people know your business. So by the time they become buyers, they are fully warmed, fully vetted, and they're really bought in. And you're just so surprised how many people are just like crushing content online, right? I think it changes the game a lot. So anyways, my big call out for everyone is I was not a social media guy, and I'm still not a social media guy, but it is way too valuable to ignore.
Man, 100%. I love it. I love the evolution of that. And it's kind of like choose your hard, right? Because paid marketing is hard, but content marketing is also hard. And what I heard in that story was it's not like, okay, yeah, a fairy tale ending in the beginning in terms of, all right, I started doing organic and it was so easy and it just popped off immediately. It was like, no, it was actually really hard. I had to try to figure it out, figure out what worked. I had to be intentional and create my tone. I had to figure out like my positioning. I had to figure out my branding, and then I had to start experimenting. And when shit would flop, I would need to then pivot and figure out, like, pick myself up and kind of the embarrassment of like, oh, that flopped, and then go out there and have the courage to do it again, right? And that's what I heard in all of that. I mean, you said it in the way you said it, but that's what I heard, and what I heard is, grit in the determination to move forward, which is awesome, because I think what that does is it says a lot about what you will be like for franchisees, right? Because the cool thing about, you know, then being a franchisee, a lot of the times, especially for more emerging brands, the franchisee is they're buying the system, yes, but the early adopters are buying the founder. That's really who they're buying. They're buying you, and then the system is really a byproduct of you, because the reality is, in an emerging franchisor, as most emerging founders will tell you, is that there's still a lot of this that's getting figured out. But people are so bought in on, hey, Neil, man, I want to follow you. I believe in you. I believe you can help lead me to success. And so, opening up and sharing that journey, I think it's a natural progression that, that you're going to get those people who are willing to take a bet on, hey, I believe in Neil.
Yeah, I think you said it so well. I think people will follow the founder more, at least at the beginning in the franchise system. And for that reason, there's a reason why a lot of the people who join the system right now have the same philosophy as me when I view business, when I view life, when I view work-life balance, because I'm vetting them, right? Like they're almost pre-vetted by coming through my social media content when they reach me. So it's negating the people who aren't a vibe with us and attracting the people who are. And I do think that's so important because and even for larger businesses, maybe not like McDonald's, but who the founder is going to dictate where the company goes and how much they invest in the systems, how much they grow. And I've bought into like coaching courses with someone who I'm like, their system's not built, but I know this person is going to over deliver for me, so I'm not really worried, right? Like I don't really care what the product is, but I just know that they're going to deliver more value than I've given them. I feel comfortable with it, and that's the kind of thing we're trying to do. Where when people buy in, they know that what they're going to get is way more than they put in, and they know that naturally. And it takes a while to get there, right? And it's going to be slower than someone who wants to grow by 300 units in a year because there's no way people can know you that intimately if you're trying to grow 300 units a year. But it's just a different methodology with attracting the right franchisee and negating the ones who aren't going to be a fit.
Man, it's such a good point. It's interesting because I recently added myself back into the rotation of our sales calls, to stay fresh, to just continue to understand what's kind of going on with folks. And if for the first couple of years in the business, I mean, I've taken, I don't know, hundreds, if not 1,000 calls, if not more than 1,000 calls from folks who reached out wanting to work with us. And a lot of similar stuff that you're saying, right? Which is you attract people who are like, man, I resonated with your story. I resonated with your story and how you made that journey. And they are pre-sold, in the sense of, a lot of them won't even, and I'm sure you get this. They're not going out and comparing you to other cleaning franchises. Maybe some of them will, but probably most of them aren't, because they're buying into you. They're buying into your story, and they're like, "Hey, if I want to do this, I want to do this with you because I believe in you and I trust you." And they feel your authenticity. And so yesterday, I had this call with a guy. Someone on our team did the initial call with him. I had the second call, and a pretty analytical guy, has a 9 to 5, and has been trying to create his own startup for some time now, and he just said, you know, it's really hard. It's really hard trying to do this whole startup thing, and I'd rather put that on hold and go learn how to build a business through a franchise. But as you know, some of the really analytical people, they can sometimes take long times to make decisions, which drives me crazy personally because I am very high D. I do have a good amount of thinker, kind of analyzer in me, but I'm very high D, and what drives me crazy is people who can't make decisions. If you and I have a conversation, Neil, and you're like, "Yeah, I love it. I think it's great and I really want to do it," it's like, okay, let's get started right now. And you're like, no, I want to start a week from now. Like, why? That's dumb. What do you mean you want to start? What do you you want to start a week from now? That makes no sense because what's going to happen is life's going to slap you in the face. There's something called the law of diminishing intent, Lodi, and your best intention will decrease over time. And so the likelihood of you not following through will be higher every single day that you don't take action. Anyways, long story short, the guy, he wind up enrolling in our program right there in the call. We actually spent a long time together. And he's like, usually I take like a few days to think about it, but I feel really comfortable with you. And I feel like, you're going to take care of me. So yeah, let's just do it. And part of that was the authenticity, Neil, of like he was asking me some questions towards the end where it was like, "Oh, you've only owned 2 franchises?" And, I thought it was more, and I just said, "Look, man," I said, "if you're looking for the guy that's done everything right and did everything perfect and was the most successful, you're in the wrong place." Like, part of why I do this is because I made mistakes, and I wanna help you avoid making those mistakes. So if you're looking for perfection, it's not me. And that's what helped made him feel comfortable moving forward because he was like, "You're not gonna BS me."
Yeah. I do think, especially in this franchise world, people have their guards up, man. Because look, there's brokers that get a large cut for selling you something. There's franchise vendors, there's franchisors who get a cut of everything. It's rightfully so. And I won't even say in the franchise world, like you go on Instagram, all I'm getting is like, join my course. And like everyone's guard is up, and I understand why. And what cuts through that noise is kind of what you and I talked about of just posting your authentic self on social media or posting real talk and just laying down how it actually is because people see who you are and say, I trust that. And I think most people have a pretty good sense on like what's BS or not, right? What's a quick win or what's a quick buck or not. And when you present to someone in that transparent, authentic way, number one, on our end, it's way easier. It's like I'm not hiding anything. Here's what it is. I don't have to think about the difference when I'm speaking with one person and another. I'm just saying the exact same thing. It's just so much less energy wastage to think about that way from a tactical level. And on top of that, I think it just compounds, right? Just like you said, that little voice of authenticity for you, it was way easier to say that than try to convince the guy. And that's what actually worked. So more authentic, more transparent. I think that's the way things go. And it's interesting because like I don't know if this is true, but I feel like it's a little bit more of like a newer way of doing it on social media. Like the old way has been like paid ads, funnels, sales tactics, upsells, downsales, scarcity, urgency. And I think what's working, at least for me right now, is just radical transparency, being super open, being myself, being not polished, and throwing that on. And I think people like that, right? And that's what people want to see.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that because creating content alone, as you know, is like a full-time job in itself. So it's almost like running 2 businesses, and we were talking about that with the podcast stuff. So we have the Franchise Empire Show channel, we have the main YouTube channel. It's a lot. I mean, we have 3 video editors on our team. 2 of them are full-time. Our director of marketing oversees that. That's a job in itself. We have someone that does all of our social media stuff, and recently I just started feeling burned out. Just feeling burned out. Going, this is hard to keep up with all this because we started trying to elevate our type of content that we're making on the main channel, and to be honest, I tried to start copying some other people kind of in my space of how they did it. And I remember one video we made We did like an in-person one, kind of like that, and a breakdown. And then we had to, it took me about 6 hours to go through and actually, we had 5 different revisions of the video to try to figure out, take over an hour of footage and get it down to only like 25 minutes of a final video. And that whole thing was exhausting. Then the video flopped.
On top of that, dude.
It flopped. And I thought, man, I'm not being authentic, you know? And so I said to the team, I said, I'm kind of burned out on making these like highly edited videos. I just want to sit in front of the camera and just talk. And so the one of the videos we just recorded was just me sitting in in front of the camera talking about how like I'm burned out and here's what I'm doing about it. And just, I don't know what's going to happen with the video. It's not even edited yet. But it feels better already just to not try so hard and be someone else, you know?
Yeah. It's less energy, like then you're just doing the comparison game. Then you're doing the game of like, what's the other person doing? I got to keep up with them. There's just a lot of energy wastage in that mentality. And it's kind of like what we talked about earlier, where whatever you can do consistently, that's going to win. Like the how or the what, it doesn't quite matter. Like I remember reading a stat recently. If you do 100 hours of a new skill, you've done more than 95% of that new skill. So Dark, if you want to learn piano, if you've done 100 hours of piano, you've done more than the vast majority of people who've ever picked up a piano. Now, that translates to 17 minutes per day for 1 year. That's it. I've scrolled for more than 17 minutes a day, but if you just do 17 minutes a day for a year, you will have done more than 95% of the population at that one skill or whatever you want to do. So, for example, if you want to get into content creation, do 17 minutes a day for a year. Congrats, you've beaten out 95% of the population. It's not about the right one to do. I think everyone's trying to find the silver bullet saying, this is the way I should be doing it. Look what that person's doing. I've gone there too, right? Like it's really tough not to play the comparison game. But then this is what I tell franchisees too. It just goes back to doing the boring, consistent stuff consistently. And as long as you do that, you're going to win. It doesn't matter what the what is or what the tactic is. Just do the right stuff consistently, and that's pretty much it.
Man, so much nuggets there. All right, last question because we got to go. The folks so you now have 20 franchisees in your system. I'm sure you've seen some folks get off to a fast start and be able to start executing better than others already. I'm sure you can start to see the difference. What are you seeing as the difference, whether characteristic, mindset, strategy of the folks who start winning quickly versus the ones who don't?
The number one is how much time availability they have on a given week to devote to it. We're kind of a unique system where we don't require you to be full time from the beginning. You can keep your work from home part job and then kind of do this on the side until there's a point, not too long down the line, where you decide, hey, it's starting to pick up steam, let me go full time. Now, the people I see go off to a really quick start are doing this full time from the beginning, where they're like, hey, I'm going to go knock on 20 apartment doors today. They get one contract, and that contract's going to give them $4,000 per month, right? That's something that can happen. If you are stuck at a desk, you can't go out and do that kind of stuff. You're going to be only reliant on online marketing. And what if that's not working? Then you're going to move at a snail's pace. So it really is a matter of time at the beginning of business. There's no such thing as a manage the manager model. In the first 6 to 12 months, it's just like you got to put your own time and sweat equity into this. And that doesn't mean you're going out and doing the cleanings, but like the more effort and time you put into this, the faster it's going to grow. That's the direct correlation I see every single time.
I love it. 100%. Cool, man. Neil, for folks that want to check you out and either follow you and follow your journey or want to learn more about your franchise, where should they go?
Yeah, a couple places. So my podcast is called The Freedom Formula by Neil Parekh. Feel free to check it out on YouTube podcast, wherever you get that. You could also check out the Maid This Franchise YouTube channel. Just go to Maid This, MAIDTHIS. We try to post a lot of like building in public videos, a lot of the inside scoop on the franchise, just be as transparent as possible. I'm also on Twitter, mostly Neil B. Parekh. So anywhere online, you'll be able to find me.
Cool. Awesome, man. Well, thanks for coming on. I really enjoyed this conversation.
That was awesome. Thanks, Tarek.
Yes, sir. Hey, before we go, thank you so much for listening to this episode. Please subscribe here on YouTube if you haven't already. And the biggest thank you that you could ever give me is to share this episode with someone who you think will benefit. That means that we can share this message with more people and hopefully positively inspire them like we have you. So thank you. And until next time, go build your empire.